And he has to, pick him up like a cat about to leave the doorstep of the house. And be like, no, 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 no. And as soon as he turns around, he runs right back over to the hole.
Pew pew! Pew pew! Run, 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 run. Welcome to Podages, your critically nostalgic analytical tour through the Digimon anime. I'm your host, Jeff Ruberg. This week we are discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, episode 21, the Tide Turning Update, and my guest this week is Chris Farris, the writer at Anime News Network, who's been covering the Digimon reboot since the show started in April. Thanks for coming on the show, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad. I've been enjoying your reviews.
Oh, thank you.
So let's dive into some my standard questions I ask every guest when they come on.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
how'd you get into Digimon?
Got into it as a kid with the Fox Kids airing of Digimon Adventure, the season 1. I was already. It's funny because I was already big into Pokemon at the time, and when they started showing the ads for Digimon, instead of being like, "Oh, that looks like a ripoff" or something, it was more like, "Oh, some other cool monster anime. I'll probably like this too," and started following it. I mean, it's one of those shows that, especially when you're a kid and it's this like heavily serialized, constantly plotting adventure show, it really sucks you in and you get really into it. I just became a big fan after that, following a lot of the other seasons afterwards and kind of following the franchise until I got really excited for the reboot that was coming out and was able to be the one who got to write the reviews now that's airing.
Sweet, sweet. So it sounds like were you like mainly into the anime side of the franchise, not so much the games and other stuff?
Was mainly into the anime. Never played with any of the V-Pets or anything. Did play the original Digimon World on the PS1 quite heavily, as much as I could. Have you played the original Digimon World?
No, I didn't have a PlayStation 1 at the time, so like
Oh, okay.
that totally missed me. And like when I tried to look at it later, I'm like, this doesn't look like a fun game.
It's kind of fun. It's such a weird game. It almost demands to be played with a guide because the mechanics of the thing, just in terms of recruiting Digimon for your town, how to figure out evolutions and training and stuff like that, is so inscrutable that, I mean, you probably could figure it out on your own if you had a ton of time and patience, but it's pretty wild. Other than that, I haven't really played any of the other games that seriously. I did collect. I did have a bunch of the toys as a kid. I'm actually big into collecting action figures, Transformers mostly, but like anime toys and stuff like that. I did some reviews on my Tumblr of a while back of some of the remade Digivolving figures that Bandai was putting out. They still are putting them out, actually. So I still follow along with those a bit when they come out, but it's yeah, mostly an anime person.
And the seasons that you've seen in the anime, which seasons have you seen? And was it mainly dubbed or subbed as well?
Yeah, I've seen Adventure both dubbed and subbed, and then I've seen Adventure 02, Tamers, Frontier, all dubbed. I've seen a good chunk of Savers subbed, and then just a few scattered episodes of the later seasons, including Cross Wars, Atmon, just a couple subbed episodes of those. Plus, I've seen X Evolution subbed. I watched all of Try subbed, and then just recently I saw Last Evolution Kazuna dubbed.
Nice, nice. Did not expect you to mention X Evolution in that list, but I'm sorry for your loss.
It wasn't that, honestly, it's been so long and that movie is just such a whatever that basically all the content of it is completely slid off my brain in the intervening years. So
All right, so now for a quick lightning round. What's your favorite season?
Tamers. I know that's the easy answer for a lot of people, but it's for a reason. It's really good.
Favorite Digimon?
I saw this thing and I was trying to think earlier of like narrowing down my absolute favorite, and it's a hard choice. I gotta say, it's probably pretty easy. It's probably either Wargreymon, Weregarurumon, or maybe Edamon.
Hmm. So no one from Tamers.
No one, no, like as far as like actual Digimon go, probably no one from like, I think Gargamon is really cool in Tamers. But yeah, I mean, like there's not a lot of real jump outs from there. It's like I love the characters and the plot and everything from Tamers, but like actual Digimon, that's a tougher call.
Hmm. And favorite villain?
Again, probably Edamon. See, I'm trying to think of like, I mean, Tamers has, as far as villains, has like the D Reaper, which was a big cool presence there, but as a villain, like actual character, is harder for me to come to grips as a favorite. Dark horse choice for my favorite villain might actually be Lucamon from Frontier.
Oh wow.
It's that kind of creepy aspect without some of the. I mean, I like my Otismon a lot too, but I think Lucamon almost hits like he gets to be a little scarier sometimes. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Edamon, at this point would you, if I told you Edamon shows up in the reboot in episode 30 and has a big presence in this show, would that make you excited, or like basically do you want him to show up in this reboot, or like
Oh, honestly, if it lets them move on from deciding to do Devamon for this friggin' long in this show, I say yeah. I've been thinking about this for so long. It's like they're sitting here trying to drag out making Devamon seem important and threatening in an adventure reboot, and it hasn't gone anywhere whatsoever. So, if we're going to do Edamon, first of all, that means there might actually be a little more lightheartedness and humor to the reboot's way of doing things. So that might be a good thing. And plus, just yeah, seeing a bad guy with some actual personality who isn't Devamon, yeah, I'd take it.
yeah, I guess I personally don't, not that I don't mind Devamon, because I do mind this whole arc lasting so long, but like I feel like Devamon's such a weird presence because he's such a big threat in that first arc of the original show, and he's like so intimidating, so threatening, and it like feels like his defeating him comes with such loss and everything that like it's so weird to look back on and be like he was just a champion. Like at the later stage they could just stomp him, and it's like he wasn't even that big of a threat.
When you're first watching, like, yeah, when you're first watching season one as a kid, Devilmon shows up, and yeah, he seems like this huge, colossal threat. He's the first big one they've seen and everything. But then, yeah, you in retrospect, he wasn't that big a deal, and the fact that they're trying to build him up as more of a threat than that in his case feels very forced.
Hmm.
Especially when, yeah, like you said, he's just a champion level, and we're all up to ultimates and X evolutions now at this point.
Yeah, I guess I kind of like I'm rooting for, because I like the idea of like power levels being more nebulous than just like, oh, he has the title champion, so like
Yeah,
he's not strong, but it's not working narratively. So
yeah, I don't know. Parallels in Digimon are so weird too. You're talking about someone who was driven crazy by trying to figure out how Gatomon worked in season two.
oh yeah, that's probably a problem we'll get to later in this show. Maybe
Actually,
we'll see how
yeah.
Gatomon happens. So who's your favorite adventure character?
Izzy,
Mm-hmm.
MVP of the season.
And what's your hottest Digimon take?
Um, there's another one I had to think about for a second, but I think my hottest Digimon take is actually that the dubbed Digimon the movie version of our war game is better than the original version.
Ooh, so
Yeah,
so not like not Digimon the movie, the whole thing, but just the Arbor game part.
not the whole thing, just the dubbed version. That particular version of our war game, I think, is actually I don't know. I've watched them both, and I find that version just more engaging and entertaining than the original version.
Hmm.
And that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mamoru Hosoda, but like I don't know, just the energy, and it could be a nostalgia thing talking to where that's just what I was inundated with a general tone of how it's supposed to be in my head, but it still is just very much I don't know, the tone, the energy, everything about it. I just vibe with that one way more than the Japanese version.
Yeah. I can kind of see that now, especially like, like how aren't we like we're like 10 years out from Summer Wars? So like
Yeah,
so it's like there already is like this, if you're thinking about it, like the
the better version of that.
right. It's like if you want like the purest distillation of like that plot executed well, I feel like it's no longer the original All War game, it's Summer Wars. So like it's kind of like now the original All War game is like a halfway point between the dub All War game and Summer Wars.
It ended up becoming these two separate things that are both well known for separate reasons. Although when I did finally get around to watching the Japanese version of our war game, I was surprised at the like how many of the jokes actually were in the original version that I didn't
Hmm.
expect to be there. Like I was shocked that the egg is already hatched a bit was in the Japanese version.
Yeah, that's one of those like jokes that like I'm surprised is like taken a life on its own and everyone finds like so hilarious now. And it's like I feel like at the time it was just like a tiny joke, and it's like
It's a good bit. Well, that and every of our like, I think it was mainly because of that like a Twitter post that went around there, but
yeah, yeah.
everyone loving what they did with Ty's mom in that one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess there's a lot of nostalgia for that recently because of the anniversary of the release.
Yeah.
So getting back on the topic of Adventure 2020, what are your thoughts To summarize, people who haven't been reading your reviews, what are your thoughts on the reboot as a whole so far?
Yeah, I mean, I came into it, I think, as a lot of people did, with extremely justifiably high hopes, I believe, given how those first three episodes were.
Actually, zooming back a little bit, what were your hopes before even seeing the first episode?
Oh, that's. I mean, it's interesting because yeah, before even seeing the first episode, when they said it was going to be we were going to reboot Adventure, I honestly was expecting, and I don't. I think a lot of people were something that was going to hew much closer to the original plot of the original version of Adventure, and just maybe be a more polished, changed up version of that. So I mean, I wasn't necessarily against that. I'm not one of those people that's all like, "Grr, they're doing Adventure too much." Like, I mean, that's what sells right now, and it's I have a lot of affection for the Adventure franchise in the first place. And honestly, if you look elsewhere at like the games and other stuff they're doing, there is plenty of other new Digimon stuff. So it's not like it's all as focused on just Adventure the way some people like to complain that it is. So yeah, I mean, yeah, originally I was just thinking it was going to be a more polished, solid reversioning of the original Adventure plot. So when it started, and pretty much right away we were like, oh, they're going in a completely different direction with this one. I thought that was actually really cool, and I was even more excited for where it was going to go with that in those early episodes as they started doing things differently, like introducing all the characters separately, one at a time. I thought that was a really good decision at first. Like that was a it lets them land with more import when they get introduced and makes each one feel like a major addition. But then, as the series went on and we went through the Ultimate Evolution storyline and then the Fake Tokyo story arc with that abysmal ending to that little three-parter there. And I feel like compared to how strongly the show started out in those early episodes, where it seemed like bold new direction, we're doing something new, we're going somewhere with this. I really feel like the show, even as it's been kind of hit or miss and like had some good episodes and bad episodes up to this point so far, definitely feels more making it up as they go along than it did in those early days. And I think that's some of the. I feel like whatever's going on with the writing of it at this stage, we aren't privy to that, of course, but I feel like there's something going on there that's core to some of the more notable issues the show has in these days.
Yeah, it's interesting looking back on what now a lot of those early observations feel like warning signs that we just didn't know how to read. Like the idea of the introductions being spaced out. At the time I was like, oh, this is a great way to introduce the characters with more character development and to dive deep into the characters. And it's like 20 episodes later and it's like we've seen so little of their characters still, and it's like, oh, I guess it wasn't quite that, was it? Huh.
And that's the thing, I keep coming back to it. It's funny how it's funny, assessing thing on an episode by episode basis goes, because yeah, at the time that's, oh, this is a really cool idea, this is smart, and then later on, okay, well, wait a minute, now I'm understanding the problem is this means that these characters who are already being sidelined due to the structure with less screen time just have less cumulative screen time and nothing to. Again, like you get to, that was a big problem with the Ultimate Evolution episodes, where you get to a guy like Joe who's supposed to be getting, this is supposed to be like one of his his next watershed moment of character development after a lot of build-up, but he's still only been around for like 6 or 7 episodes total.
Yeah, I think I'm coming to terms with the show, like treating a lot of things that I came into it thinking would be big deals as just not a big deal. Like I think I'm like thinking of that ultimate evolution arc, especially now with
Yeah,
what we've seen from this episode. That like I feel like the show is treating that arc as the first arc where they got to their champion forms as just introduction arc, and then
yeah.
the ultimate evolution arc as like the equivalent of the champion arc from the original show, of like they got a tiny little bit of growth but like not much more than that, and then like this next arc will be the equivalent of ultimates from the original show.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something we'll definitely talk about once we get to the episode proper, because yeah, this felt way closer to like an Ultimate debut episode from the old series than any of the Ultimate Evolution episodes from the reboot so far.
Yeah, like I think it really sunk in for me with Omegamon's usage, where it's like
Oh
we've been
man.
trained to think of Omegamon slash Omnimon as like this huge deal. It's like, I mean, his name literally Omega like comes from like he was the end of Adventure. He was
Yeah.
like the capstone adventure. Now it's like, ironically, now the dub name Omnimon makes more sense because he's just everywhere. But
Well, but it's funny because there was this big concern I remember at the end of the third episode, or at the end of the second episode, really, when Omnimon Omegamon showed up, and like I was kind of on the side of no, 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 let's see what they do with this. They're going to actually lead up to this and build up with something. Whereas there was a lot of concern I saw from other people who were like, oh, well, now that they've got Omnimon, then nothing's going to be a threat because they can just spam him to win at whatever situation they're in. And it turns out those people might actually have had a point with how he's been used so far, where he just pops up apropos of nothing because they've written themselves into a corner with bad guy upgrades popping out of nowhere.
yeah, yeah. But I think in large part it's kind of just like the things that were big, huge deals before now are just kind of mascots, and it's like Omegamon is just like the mascot for the series, and it's not supposed to be a big deal, but like the show really fails when it that episode that you're referring to where it treated like it was a huge deal, and it's like, but we know it's not anymore, so.
We know it's
uh,
not, and you couldn't even present it as well. Like, if you're gonna push the instant win button with Omnion, at least make it look cool.
yeah. Off the note of negativity, what was
Yeah.
what's your favorite Adventure 2020 episode been so far?
Let me see. It was probably I've actually liked both of the major Mimi episodes we've gotten so far. Actually, she had one of the just really nice to look at Ultimate Evolution episodes in hers. That even if the plot was still suffering for some of the same issues that the show was at that point, at least it was presented really nicely. But in terms of that, having a good presentation and doing something interesting and new, and just generally being all around good and successful at what it was trying to do, I gotta say it was the first fake Tokyo episode where they think
Mm.
they've returned home and then discover what's really going on with Aizmon. And that's a little bit of a caveat now, knowing it as we do now what that episode eventually ends up leading into. But on its own, in a vacuum, it was still like it's hard to like recapture that feeling of finally being out of the woods of the Ultimate Evolution arc and coming in with this really strong, brand new, no idea what's going on episode. That it was just a really cool feeling.
All right, let's dive into this week's episode 21, the Tide Turning Update, aka Friendship Ended with Left-Handed MetalGreymon. Now right-handed MetalGreymon is Taichi's best friend, aka the birth of Fullmetal Alchemist Greymon.
I just want to jump in there. Is given what we got from that surprise upgrade attack from Leomon just a couple episodes ago, are all the upgrades in Adventure 2020 just going to be using both hands?
Yeah, yeah. I actually I looked into this because I was like, when that Leomon thing happened, 'cause I was like, was Leomon always left-handed? Oh wait, no, he's using his left hand as the fake out, and then later uses the right hand. It's like should have seen it coming. So yeah, the spoiler policy for this episodes, we're going to be talking about everything that was in the Crunchyroll episode, including the title and preview at the end of the episode for next week, but not including any titles past next week or tech synopses and stuff that are online. So yeah, Chris, what were your general impressions of this episode?
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was generally pretty good where the series has been for the past couple episodes to this point. I thought it was interesting because it spread its focus out a bit more than I was expecting, in that we got to see a decent amount of stuff with Takeru, and we actually got some other stuff with the real world team and setting up kind of what their role is going to be moving forward. And that left just Taichi and Yamato to do the big deal fight stuff and the surprise new upgrade that is going to be seemingly the formula for things for the next couple episodes, at least I've got to assume. And none of it was, they were showing us all these characters doing things, and none of it was like exceptionally complex or complicated. But I thought they did just enough with them competently enough that I was still entertained watching it. Like, okay, we're still stuck with Taichi and Yamato being the ones that are resolving most of the fighting and the big deal stuff here, and they aren't getting really any character work involved in doing that, so it's hampering it. But we see the others doing some characterization things and following those things. So to me, that kind of fills things in a way that almost makes up for it. There's enough going on and enough interesting moving parts in this one that I was still entertained by it, and it has just a few really cool like surprises. And I mean, honestly, it's like all I can call it was just genuine surprises in just the upgrade at the end, and then also the way the Takeru meets the surprise Digimon Fortress Eldoradimon, which that'll come up later at the end, which I thought was a pretty cool. Like when that eye opens up when Takeru's down there in the basement, that actually got a whoa out of me, which was pretty cool to me.
Yeah, yeah, this episode had so many kind of like separate parts, I guess. Like, and when I think back on it, like no one of them sticks with me as like being that big of a deal or that exciting. But like in the larger picture, we're in episode 21,
Hmm.
and this episode is basically this is the first time there's been an entirely new concept introduced in this series, right? Like
Exactly.
this I don't even know, they haven't given a proper name for what they're going to be calling it, but I guess I mean, there's a profile for this new MetalGreymon form that's called Alterous Mode. So like people think are referring to it as mode changing, but
I mean, that was where my brain jumped to when I first saw it. Just
mm,
knowing, having already, awareness of how Digimon transformations work. My thing was like, okay, so that's a mode change then? What is this?
yeah, I really we'll have to see if it's like a thing that he can. Is it like is MetalGreymon permanently changed now, or is it going to be like an at will choice kind of thing. And yeah, given the like what happened in the episode, I would assume it's permanent, and that's like a permanent upgrade, but we'll see. But yeah, so like the fact that this is a shift in the status quo of the Digimon formula that I was not expecting.
Well,
Like,
especially from how the show's done things so far with
yeah.
regards to its form changes and evolutions and stuff like that.
So like yeah, I find that exciting, and I'm excited because I don't think this is an idea that any of us were expecting, and that I think is really cool. But it's also really dampering my excitement on the series as a whole because I was kind of as frustrating as I would have found it if they were like if this episode had been MetalGreymon evolving into WarGreymon, and then the next episode preview was like, and MetalGreymon shows up next, and it was clear we're just getting another retread of the Ultimate arc, but them going into Megas.
Oh yeah, no. When he started, when Taichi's doing the actual like, oh, I gotta be courageous as a character thing here, and Metal Greymon starts glowing. At first, I was like, oh hell no, they better not be doing War Greymon right now. I will be. That would be not a good decision at all. And then we got this instead, which, like you said, kind of feeds into that pleasant surprise type thing.
But like as frustrated as I would have felt by that WarGreymon thing, like I kind of was I was setting myself up for that expectation for a while. Like
Hmm.
I was like, oh, this is gonna be coming. It's gonna be frustrating. It's gonna be too soon. It's gonna be
Hmm.
unearned. But if they get it out of the way so early, and there's still 30 plus episodes left after that, that means they have something really exciting planned for after that. And now that instead they've introduced the concept in between Ultimate and Mega, makes me worried they don't have that much exciting planned after the Mega stage.
That's a good point. That's interesting because now we got this cool, surprise mode change that everyone likes. But like, I watch a lot of Toei superhero shows. It's entirely possible this thing becomes irrelevant after 5 episodes, and we just forget about it and on the way to Mega.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I'm worried that it's like, I don't know, because for a while it was like, okay, if they're at this pace where, like, at the point where they were on episode 10 and doing ultimates, and it was like, okay, even if everyone gets a mega this time, even if all 8 of them get megas, like, they'd be done by episode like 30. So that's still
Hmm.
like, oh my god, there's so much exciting. And now it's like, okay, I mean, if they all get these mode changes, and then like if Taichi and Yamato get like a second mega phase after or something, then it's like, okay, I can see how this kind of fits 6 episodes now, and it's kind of bumming me out a little bit. But
No, I mean, it
yeah.
kind of feeds into that issue with the show where before it seemed like only we had no idea what it was doing, but we know enough about it at this point to guess that maybe they aren't entirely sure either.
Yeah, but I assume like the things that excite me about it are like the broad like what did like the structure of the season, like what did they plan for this? Because I guess from the moment that we heard it was going to be 6 episodes, it's like okay, you must have I don't think they're making up like how they fit that on like the broad scale.
There's at least some kind of framework in place. I don't. I was kind of buying into the conspiracy theory that it was going to stop at episode 30ish, and we were just going to go into a 02 reboot.
That would be exciting for a different reason. So I mean, I'd be in favor for that. But yeah, I think it this episode. I mean, I think it ended. It's the like the way the pieces have been shuffled around now. Like the way the episode ends really confuses me. How they're like how Taiji and Yamato are like on the doorstep of who has been the biggest villain, like basically the final villain as far as we know at
Yeah,
this
as far
point.
as has been presented, yeah.
Yeah, and the other characters are just kind of like in the middle of something completely
Yeah,
different and
that's what I thought was
unrelated.
interesting is the way that the fact that the two plots, even though we're showing them in parallel, are very much happening at different paces right now. Like
Yeah.
yeah, the other kids are starting onto like something that just kind of got started, like basically a monster of the week plot that the others are still getting to. While Taichi and Yamato are over here like, okay, let's go fight the final boss.
Yeah, and I can't tell if like are they setting out that like oh the fact that Algamon is still out there is actually a bigger deal than any of this Devamon stuff. Like so I don't know like what is the deal with
Yeah.
any of this, or like maybe it's just Devamon sent they just there was supposed to be a scene of Devamon commanding Calamarimon to do something, and they just cut that out, and it's like I don't
We've
know.
shown Devamon sending off enough frontier enemies already. We don't need to bring any. We don't need to repeat that with other ones.
Yeah, we're actually gonna like they're gonna pad another like 10 episodes showing every frontier villain, every frontier beast spirit.
I'm I'm reminded. I feel like this is only kind of returning to favor after the way, like I remember Frontier just throwing in tons of just random armor evolution Digimon as like characters and enemies for them to fight that was not acknowledged. That's where they originated from previously.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of like random armor evolutions that show up in various points. So I don't remember specifically, but this episode actually got a debut of a new kind of an armor evolution. because MetalGreymon is an armor Digimon,
Yeah, that's
and
right. Dark MetalGreymon was
yeah,
there.
yeah. So okay, let's dive into the recap then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the episode starts off with Skull Knightmon taking the egg, attacking the kids, and Peckmon, Hawkmon, and Spidermon show up again to save them. They just come out of the blue at exactly the right moment, and
I know, like I had almost, I know it's only been a couple of episodes, but I'd almost kind of forgotten about them
yeah, I
already.
totally did. Like,
I was like, oh right, Leomon has friends. These
yeah,
guys.
and they don't ask where Leomon is. Wait, is Leomon? Where is Leomon? Is he fighting?
is, is he? Didn't they? He beat Minotaur. They just left him in Valvemon to go chase
No,
after.
he went after like a Megadramon that showed up, but I thought he defeated Megadramon, but maybe that was in my mind.
They did perfect opportunity to repeat Ogremon's sacrifice with Leomon
Oh no.
parallel, but they're not gonna. Did you see the quote from the director when the Leomon voice actor guy was in there? He's like saying he's worried he's gonna get killed off again, and the director was like, "Oh no, I won't let you escape so easily," which is a really
Yeah.
ominous thing to say regarding the general opinion of this show that everyone has right now. Anyway,
Yeah. So I was surprised when the Peckmon, Hawkmon, and Spidermon show up because Spidermon talks, and I was like, I remember him specifically not talking before, and it's like, oh, guess he got a line. He got a single line. Great.
we fought for that. We need.
Yeah. But then Skull Knightmon rides away on a dark Maildramon, which I guess is noteworthy because it's a new form that's not been seen before.
Yeah, just not even like when before they're bringing in like Cross Wars and other characters, and now we just got like new forms of other characters.
Yeah, I my memory of Crosswords Digimon though is so vague. Like this whole Skull Knightmon, like I even in the last episode's podcast last week, like I referred to Skull Knightmon incorrectly. I think I said Axe Knightmon,
Oh,
and then my last guest explained the different forms, and I still don't get it. And I still, when I wrote the show notes for last week, I like wrote down, okay, there's Skull Knightmon, and there's Deadly Axemon, and then Skull Knightmon plus Deadly Axemon is Dark Knightmon. And I still, like, I have to keep referring to those notes to remember what all those combinations are, especially because they have different dub names, two out of three of those.
oh gosh. Yeah,
Oh,
see, like I said, I haven't really watched Fusion Cross Wars, so I was double checking these characters that shown up on the wiki as I was writing the review, and I'm like, okay, Skull Knightmon, what the heck is a Skull Knightmon? And I look it up, and I'm like, okay, so he's part of this guy who shows up in this show, who is like not like partners, but working with this girl who is an antagonist, and there's all these different organizations, and like reading about, I have never heard a lot of great things about Cross Wars, and it strikes me as one of those shows where reading about it makes it seem a lot more interesting than I guess it actually is. But I don't know. It actually made me interested in the series. It makes me want to go and check it out now because it sounds like there's a lot going on there. Like even reading about like the main enemy and the actual main enemy in this episode, Splashmon. I'm like, okay, I knew he was a guy from Cross Wars. Let's look him up, and you look it up on the wiki, and it's like that is not how he looked in this show.
yeah, no, Crosswords has a lot of really cool ideas, and it's been for me. It's been a while. I haven't rewatched it since I first watched it in 2012 or so. So
Mm,
like it's been forever, but it has a lot of really cool ideas. I think it's kind of dragged down a lot by the like kind of supporting cast of characters. Like so you've
mm,
seen Frontier, right?
yeah.
And like kind of the equivalent of Bokomon and Namon from Frontier
Uh,
for Crosswords. I remember being particularly like dragging down the show a little bit,
uh,
but also there's the third arc of Crosswords, Young Hunters.
is that the young hunters jumping through time?
Yeah, is like I think like so bad that it's what leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
What's that's the big like Crisis crossover, right? And with all the other previous seasons,
I
or
mean, it's like 26 episodes that then the last like two episodes lead into that. It's like the last
mhm.
episode.
I remember they were like that was the only thing hyped up about Young Hunters that I ever remember seeing.
Yeah,
Hyped up before it happened, I think. But
I was watching that as it was airing week to week, and it was like, oh, in the background of this one shot, there's like you can see Mimi riding a ferry, and it's like, oh my god, why is Mimi riding a ferry? And it's like, or like things like that. That like,
yeah,
is this gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? Oh my god, it happened. Okay, I guess it happened. Okay, great. Like,
I
I
guess
mean, it
that
looks great.
happened.
Like, it's worth watching on its own, but like, it's not. I don't know. And then seeing later, like seeing recently how like the Precure franchise has like a yearly crossover with all the characters every year, and I'm like, oh, so like we got tiny breadcrumbs, like.
It's like well, it's like I mean, this is how Toei does a lot of their superhero franchises, especially with movies. Kamen Rider and Super Sentai do this pretty regularly as well, if not with the entire series, but with the previous the last year's group of characters,
Mhm.
and then usually have like these big anniversary crossovers with all of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that crossover led to some great moments that you can find on YouTube, but,
One of the it's one of those.
yeah. Well, anyway, the thing that's confusing about this Skull Knightmon stuff is that, like, in Cross Wars, Skull Knightmon rides a different Digimon and then combines with that Digimon to form a third
Mhm.
Digimon, and in this show, Skull Knightmon also rides a Digimon, but it's a different Digimon. It's unrelated to anything in Cross Wars, and it's a new Digimon, and it's like, okay.
Just like yeah, randomly, like it's just this little steed guy that's in there for like a few frames, and yeah, we made it. Well, I don't know if weird new form changes are going to be what we're doing moving forward. Maybe that was the hint.
Yeah, so basically Godmon evolves so the kids can chase after Skull Knightmon, and Taichi comments that they're at the Dark Swamp again, and I just
The miasma. We spent a dozen episodes going around this thing, and we're back.
I'm just so confused. I don't think I read your reviews from around that era of the show, but like that Dark Miasma thing, like I thought it made so much narrative sense to split up to go around it. And then whenever they talked about the logistics of like why they split up, they like totally lost track of why they split up. They also like in those episodes afterwards when they're split up, it's like they're no longer in eyesight of the I thought they were going around a lake and suddenly their lake is not even in eyesight anymore.
It didn't
And it's
even look that big when they were next to it in the episode that established it.
Yeah. So the fact that now they're like, "Oh, we see the lake again," it's like, shouldn't you have the whole time you're going around it? Like, what?
I mean, I
Ugh.
guess maybe it makes sense since they weren't, they were. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense because originally, my first thought just now was like, okay, well, they had to chase the, Takeru and everything to go get him. So maybe they ended up going backwards, and that's how they ran back into the miasma again. They just wanted to back there. Except no, this episode is a big point in this one is no, we're at the end point of the where Ogremon told us to go. So they had been going forward this whole time, basically.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. At some level, it's like the show, I guess, is not supposed to make sense. Like it.
I mean, and that's very simplistic kind of looking for plot holes. If you think about this and you want to be bugged by it, you can. And I am bugged by it. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's part and parcel to what makes this episode specifically good and bad in places compared to all the other components. It's
Yeah.
just one of those little things where you think about it and like, wait, yeah, the miasma. Why is this back here again?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they get to the tower, and Skull Knightmon flies inside the tower. And this is something I noticed, or sorry, I missed the first time I watched it because I was confused because like they see Skull Knightmon flying to the tower, and then later they're like, "How did we get into this tower?" And I was like, Can't you fly?" Like MetalGreymon flew a lot last episode, but I forgot that I missed that the entrance actually seals shut after Skull Knightmon goes inside.
I barely caught it like as it was happening. It's a weirdly like they don't usually okay like just like rules of narrative and stuff like that in cartoons and shows and stuff when that's a deal you have you have a zoom in on it and it actually
Yeah, yeah.
does something. But this they leave it at the same distance and it's like the door is like a gray color on the gray tower and you can see it sliding over there. But you really have to for whatever reason they make it so you really have to be looking for it. I almost wonder if like they didn't catch that in the initial writing process. They had to go back and add that to the animation at the last minute during production or something. It's really. I remember watching that and going, "That's a weird way to depict that," but I guess at least I know why they can't just go up there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also Taichi comments on how intense the tower looks, and there's like, it's a good visual of like how intimidating the whole scene looks. But like, at this point, I'm like, you know, you're at the doorstep of the final villain, like, and you don't even think like maybe we should get the whole group here, maybe we should figure out how to get them here first. But no, they're just like, oh, I guess we're gonna do this. I guess we're gonna fight the final bad guy.
They haven't even they haven't even called Koshiro back since that first time he let them know they were all okay. Does he not miss their
Yeah.
weekly Zoom calls from the beginning of the show?
Uh, yeah. I guess he doesn't even know that anything about Takaru, does he?
He knows he's Yamato's brother, and that's it. He doesn't. Oh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
whole other thing. That happened on the way over, where they were like, Takaru was like, "Hey, Yamato, can we talk about things? Not now, kiddo. We promised the audience we'll do this later."
He can't talk. He's not allowed to talk. So,
There's an abridged series running gag waiting to happen there.
so Takaru finds a feather on the ground, which I kept wondering, like, is this a Chekhov's feather that's going to go off this episode? But maybe it was just a sign that Angemon came from the tower, or maybe it's going to
That's
go
the
off in the
way
next
I took
episode.
it, but I know it seems like every time Takaru and Hikari get within spitting distance of a feather, some other Deus Ex Machina thing takes forever to happen in this show. So
Yeah. So Devimon summons Splashmon out of the miasma, and Splashmon, we've mentioned a couple times, is a villain from Cross Wars. He's one of the titular Death Generals from the Cross Wars arc, and
Hmm.
I was definitely confused because like if you just look up,
Yeah, you look him up on the wiki and you're like, wait, who? This is not who I'm looking at.
yeah, this show just calls him Splashmon, period. But yeah, according to the wiki, and I assume this comes from the Digimon reference book, that like the Splashmon is the original form that's in Cross Wars, which is this like water guy. He's just like a
Yeah, you know,
guy.
he kind of looks like a Precure villain, actually.
Oh yeah. Um, and then supposedly this form that they show in the reboot is Splashmon Darkness mode, according to the reference book.
Darkness Mode 2.
Oh, is there Darkness mode 2 and 1?
You know, yeah, he has a Darkness Mode 1, which is just him being all he just gets muscular, and then
Mm.
after that is where he unzips his bodysuit, and this the thing that looks like a fever dream nightmare version of Garurumon comes out, and
Yeah, like
which I love. I love its design, and I love how scary it is.
when I saw him in the preview at the end of last week's episode, and I did not make the connection to Cross Wars, I was like, why is there like a horror version of Garurumon here? Like, what's going on here?
Hmm.
But this is the Halloween nightmare version of Garurumon, really. So there's there's a lot of things about his form that I find so weird. But the thing that I think is the weirdest is every time he attacks, he has a baseball that he like spits the
Yeah,
water out of.
it's not called attention to, but that is just a ball on the end of his tail, or that weird. And I don't know if this is something from Cross Wars. I saw multiple people on the Twitter asking questions about it. That weird sigil that glows in that they keep calling attention to. That, near as I can tell, doesn't actually mean anything. It's just there.
Yeah, I went back and watched the like important parts of that episode of Crosswords just to be like, was this even in the original design? And it is there for like a split second in Crosswords, but it's definitely called attention to much more this time. And
Yeah,
I think the point of it is that it's like, like he has like a liquid body and like there's no, you can't really hit
yeah.
any part, and it's like that's the one core part that like he's made up of these like dripping spirits, and that's like the one core dripping spirit or something like that.
Yeah, the splash familiars or whatever they were called. Yeah, I was
Mm.
reading about that too. It just makes it even weirder that they used a character like this as a one-off monster of the week here, given that he has got so much baggage just in how he works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of. I think like if it were just that glowing core, it makes sense. And it's okay, you have to attack the glowing core, but they can't seem to hit it. Like, I think that's intuitive enough. You don't need to get any explanation. But the fact that he has like, it's like weird glowing baseball that he spits things out of, it's like these two things together are just very strange.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So basically, Greymon and Garurumon evolve off screen, which I only noted down because I was like, oh, so there were evolutions that they purposely did not pad time for. That means they like had lots of action they actually wanted to show and like were willing to put in resources to show. That makes me I feel good about this episode, but
No, there's a lot going on in terms of like the action, the actual things, like there's a lot of like hits, for lack of a better word to codify it. A lot of bits that happen. One thing is when you talk about how they evolve, they ultimate evolve off screen, but the part I thought was funnier was the way they do the champion evolutions, but they're all sped up.
oh, I didn't even notice they were sped up.
Yeah, they do the champion evolutions. They just cut them really fast. It's all like fast forwarded basically. And
Oh
I kind of
yeah.
had the same reaction to you to them doing that off screen, where it was like, oh, they really want to get into this week, or they think we're just tired of watching these evolutions over and
I think mentally I fast forward through
over.
champion evolutions. I don't actually literally like skip forward, but I'm like, so I didn't even notice it when the show itself also skips through or
Check out, oh,
fast.
fine. Oh, they're champion evolving. I can check my phone.
Yeah, yeah. So Yamato puts Takeru aside and is like, "Hey, stay here, stay safe," and he almost immediately just,
Yamato stashes Takaru in a bush.
yeah, this bush is gonna keep you totally safe. And Takeru does not listen to that and just starts climbing out a nearby ditch.
It's so funny. He's like one of those kids that has a fixation on doing something dangerous. Because like when they first get to it, like he just goes over and like starts wanting to go down the cliff, and he has to pick him up like a cat about to leave the doorstep of the house. And be like, no, 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 no. And as soon as he turns around, he runs right back over to the hole.
Yeah. He is just a cat trying to get into the hole. He smells Angemon feathers. And so now we get to the highlight of the episode, or what I thought would be the highlight episode going into it, because I basically like last week was speculating about how we saw a image of Sora's mom that was kind of
Mhm.
faded, and it was kind of like, oh no, the fact that it's like faded and like they're not really elaborating on it. I was like, is this the most we're going to see of the parents? And then release that episode, and then like later that day there was preview screenshots of the episode that was this episode airing, And in those previous screenshots, we saw these designs of Mimi's parents and Joe's brother, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess I was wrong. I guess they're going to be in this episode, and they basically were.
For I don't know, like to me, I thought I mean, they were in there, and like I said, I think as short as the appearance was, I think it was probably the most engaging part of the episode. And showing that, I just want to sidebar here, by the way, with regards
Mhm.
to the design of the parents, and this is going back to like the very first episode of the Adventure 2020 reboot, back before we really even know what direction this thing was going to go, and how it was going to be handled. But we come into the beginning of the show, and right away we know things are pretty different and everything. And I thought it was always cool when the series started, and the character designs were still pretty close to the original designs, but they had a few like tweaks to their proportions and outfits and everything. But when Taichi's mom showed up, and she's just, I don't know why it was so weird to me that she's basically exactly the same as the classic design, like completely one to one compared to the old one. And I don't know, just for some reason that struck me as weirder than any of the other like changed up aspects or anything in the show, that she was precisely the same design as they'd had in the classic one. So then when we get to this new episode, and there's Mimi's parents again looking exactly the same as I remember them, and then Joe's brother, who I actually don't know what's the Japanese name of Joe's brother. I know he's Jim in the in the dub, but I actually don't know. Can't
Oh,
remember what he's called in Japanese.
I don't remember. And there's
He might not even
like,
have a name. He might just be Onisha.
well, there's also the weirdness of the fact that in Japanese he has, I believe, two brothers. That the dub collapsed into a single brother.
Oh, that's right. I almost
Oh,
forgot about that.
but I also don't remember. Like, I think that only happens because I think they're never shown on screen together.
So we don't know which brother this is.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I didn't. I totally did not have that reaction when seeing Taichi and Hikari's mom before, like in episode one or whatever.
Yeah, it was very much a weird thing for me.
But no, but this episode, I totally had that reaction. Like, I think it was specifically with Mimi's parents look so strange, and like it feels dated in a way that I feel like a lot of the other designs don't quite.
Well, because yeah, it's shooting for the same art style, but it's still like it's updated subtly, but still noticeably. Whereas they looked like just ripped straight from the old art style of the old animation of the series.
Yeah, and I feel like they were always kind of like the two of them in particular were always a little bit different than everyone else. Like they're like
They're supposed to be like the quirky, eccentric kind of ones.
right, right. But you know what it reminds me of? It's like it reminds me of in like gotcha games where different character portraits are drawn by totally different artists and they're all just in the world
Yeah.
together.
Just-
Yeah. So
yeah, I don't know if the production team just like I don't know, just quickly referenced these designs because they had to put them in this one scene that didn't actually last that long, so they didn't worry about creating new model sheets for them or what. But yeah, it's just as much as I like the Mimi bit and the Joe bit as well, that's a weird component of it.
yeah, and I mean I think these bits with Mimi, like we see that Mimi's having tea time with her parents and grandfather, and basically she just like talks about how she's so happy to have like gotten like a good night's sleep in a bed and like warm clothes and stuff, and they're like, isn't that normal? And then she's like, okay, gotta go, bye.
Classic
uh,
Mimi.
Yeah, and we see that she's getting driven around, which I've seen a lot of people react to that like it's like a sign of how wealthy she is. And I was like, I mean, I guess, but also it's kind of like she just called an Uber and is riding an Uber. But
Mimi, I mean, yeah, Mimi can afford Uber. That's rich.
yeah. um and on Joe's side, he's basically we see him like kind of walking away from apparently well, I mean, his brother mentions that their parents or mom, I think maybe. I forget which one. Anyway,
Yeah, they just say mom. They very
yeah.
specifically just mention his mom. I don't know if his dad was at work or what, but
Yeah, so the mom was chewing him out, and
mhm.
Joe's brother is kind of like surprised that he ran away and abandoned his cram school and stuff for 3 days.
Thinks it's really cool. Gives him a, I made you a go bag.
Yeah, yeah, it's basically like you shouldn't do this, but also here's the beer, just like so yeah, like these moments with I was a little disappointed because I was like, oh, kind of these moments are so short, and we just kind of I feel like all they were was like tiny little crumbs.
I mean, it's definitely crumbs, and I think it's as much the fact that I liked them and appreciated them for as much as we got is, I mean, like I'm going to give that to the show as points, but it's also kind of an indictment of how little the show has given to us until this point. And you know what? That does make me concerned about how it's going to handle these aspects of the other characters moving forward. Like, last episode, they had that bit you mentioned with Sora and a little flashback to her mom, which in turn led to just this faintest of reaction from Koshiro, which of course brings up the question of, oh, wait a minute, how are they gonna what are they going to do with Koshiro's family situation in this, if anything? Because that was like such a huge component of the character in the original, and one of the more like apart from Takiro and Yamato, one of the more intense family informed aspects of a characterization in the original series. And it had me wondering, yeah, what are they going to do with him? And now I'm wondering, how much of that are we going to get in this one, even?
Yeah, like on the one hand, I'm excited because it's okay. They gave him like the trailing off, like planting a flag in the ground that we're going to get back to it later.
We know this is a big deal for the character. We have to do something with it.
Yeah, but I am pretty worried that it's like the thing they're gonna do with it is gonna be much smaller than the original show. Like I could see them I could see them cutting out the like adoption angle to it completely and just be like, oh, his parents were really strict and they were really mad at him about it and he's like upset about it or something like something that
Yeah,
just like compresses things down is my biggest concern.
I feel like that kind of is an aspect, another one of the sanding down of the elements the characters have had so far. Whereas like this Koshiro definitely doesn't have a lot of the same personality, personable hangups with interacting with people that Izzy in the original Adventure did, and that's because really early, relatively early on, they were informing us that that issue with his parents was the reason that Izzy was the way he was in that one. And since Koshiro doesn't have a lot of those same character foibles, you're right. That speaks to the possibility that they might just be skipping that element of his backstory entirely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also pretty interesting how like how fundamental that feels to Koshiro's or Izzy's development in the original adventure, especially early on. And then
Hmm.
like because it's in my mind from seeing Last
Hmm.
Evolution Kizuna recently is that like the thought that he doesn't like that doesn't affect his character or personality at all in Try in Zero Two and Try or in
Yeah,
Kizuna.
they. I don't think they even mention it in Trier Kazuna.
But I think that totally makes sense. Like I think that's the kind of thing that like
It's a big thing at the end of the Myotis monarch. Yeah, he very pointedly. I don't want to say use the term gets over it lightly, but like there's a resolution there.
right. And it's kind of thing that like weighs on him a ton until it's resolved. And it's like,
Hmm.
it makes sense that to not really bring that up every instance and be like,
Yeah.
You're feeling sad now? Did you know you're adopted?" Like, that doesn't make sense to, like.
I don't know, like maybe if Last Evolution Kazuna. I mean, I thought not to dive into Last Evolution Kazuna as a sidebar too much here, but I mean they used Koshiro a fair amount in that one. But like maybe if he'd been more of a main character in that one, they would have had time to kind of reflect on how that's meant to him moving forward. But
Yeah.
it's just still more than what they're doing with him here so far in 2020.
Yeah. Well, so basically, Koshiro sets up the Digivices to have little personal, walkie-talkies with the Digimon, and, then Tentamon is like, "Oh, no, stuff's going on in the network," and they fly over and see that call the I guess the official name is not Kalmarimon, it's Kalamaramon.
Well, like is he Koshiro has trouble saying it in the show.
That's true. Um,
Kalamanaman. I think in the dub of Frontier, they specifically cut a syllable out and just pronounce it Kalmaramon, just to make it easier on the syllables. Kalamaramon.
oh yeah, because I guess I didn't think about it, but yeah, I'm used to Kalmarimon from Frontier, like that
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation from the Frontier dub, but like the food is not calamari, the food is calamari, right?
Yeah, the food is calamari, where the Digimon
Yeah,
is calamara.
yeah, okay.
Calamara. See, calamarama. Just say Calmaramon. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, anyway, Kusher also gets a report that they're wondering what the. Oh my god, it's only just intimidating me because now I'm thinking about it too much. But they see that Kusher is wondering what Kalmaran is affecting, and then gets a report that a ship lost control in the Strait of Malacca. And
Hmm.
I looked this up because I did not recognize the Strait of Malacca, and I think it's kind of funny because while I tweeted about this on Twitter, maybe people saw that tweet, but basically, like, so when I was watching that, boyfriend, he joked that it was the same plot as a recent Detective Conan movie where a ship starts to stray off course and threatens to crash into the Singapore harbor, and I was like, okay, but it's not that, clearly not that, they're not doing the same plot. And
It's
apparently that is the Strait of Malacca, and that is the image they're showing, that the ship is going into Singapore.
we've moved on from these bits ripping off the plot of our war game, and now we're just taking on Detective Conan.
Yeah, yeah. I think the parallel a lot of people brought up is in Data Squad slash Savers when the same thing basically happens to Yokohama and Marcus Masaru tries to fight the boat.
He has one solution to everything. What else did you expect?
Oh, but yeah, so back in the digital world, Splashmon is like dominating and basically dominating so much that he reverts Wargurumon back to Gabumon and then
Hmm.
bites onto MetalGreymon's arm, starts throwing him around. And pausing from that, Takaru reaches the big firewall, and this moment where like he reaches this big firewall, and it's like there's really dramatic music. It's really, I feel like it was really evocative, but I was like, I don't know enough about Takaru to like care about. Like this is like a big cinematic moment, but it's not like.
Yeah, no, it's very much an evocative world. The presentation, as the show often ends up doing in the successful moments it does have, the presentation itself is doing a ton of the heavy lifting, especially the soundtrack, which is continues
Mhm.
to be like the one thing that's consistently great about this show.
Yeah,
Is
seeing the big firewall reminded me of the moment in Adventure. I guess it would have been like episode 20 or so when
mm,
Taichi like walks through the firewall and stuff, and there's all that
yeah,
hemming and hawing about like he initially goes in without thinking about it, then can't do it, and then does eventually and stuff. And it's like seeing that at a similar point in the show. I was like, that was a great character moment, and the show has done nothing like that, nothing of that level.
Instead, it's like, well, to me, it kind of felt like with what Takaru ends up doing here, with what turns out to be Eldoradimon. To me almost felt like, okay, Taichi and Yamato are the only other characters we have in the digital world here right now, and they clearly aren't doing any of the empathetic interacting with other Digimon stuff. So with Takaru being the only one here, now he has to pick up the slack that like Sora and Mimi and them had, and he's gonna do it regardless of whether he's allowed to talk or not.
Yeah, and all it really does is point his Digivice at this giant eye.
It was a very cool, it was a very cool, well presented, evocative one. I really like that moment where the eye opens and there's that scale of it behind the firewall and the just like dwarfing Takaru. It was a big cool whoa moment. Just so long as you're not going, wait a minute, why is this happening?
Yeah, like I guess it does, because like character development doesn't need to have like elaborate dialogue and stuff. Like I think this does convey a lot about his character that he is like curious and he's not scared because like that should be terrifying, a giant eye opening in front of you, and he does not seem to be scared by it.
Well, he's
He
not
is,
flinching. This is the kid who was happy to just like free climb down a rock face to get there. This is something we're learning about this version of Takaru. He's like inscrutably brave.
yeah, he should have the
Like,
crest of courage apparently.
it's fearless, just
Yeah,
unfazed by everything here.
but yeah, so I can't tell if like are they actually really effectively and evocatively teaching us about Takeru's character, or is this just like accidental and they need this plot thing to happen, so they like put him there and made him do these things?
He's the only other person here who can do this while Takaru. We wrote all the other characters out so nobody else can be down here to set this thing free.
Yeah. Well, anyway, basically, Taichi runs after MetalGreymon when Splashmon's trying to pull him into the miasma, and Taichi screams out not giving up, and he also like tries to pry his teeth out himself, and he literally gets his hands dirty.
Actually jumps in. I mean, the kids in general have been more active than before in this season, but
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of it has, like, especially with these ones, kind of. Well, I mean, Yamato had the big thing where he jumped down there and had to pull Takaru out of the orb. In that one, where there's been still a lot of just riding on the Digimon, just so they're more involved in the fights than just standing on the sidelines before. Which is something I thought was really funny when Yamato goes to, earlier when he puts Takaru to the side, and it's like that's where you guys would have been in the original show anyway.
That's where you should be if you're actually applying logic and reason to these battles. But
No, they're 10. Let Daichi think he's just by pulling the teeth out originally, he's gonna. I mean, it did turn the tide. So now he's got a really bad idea for. They're just gonna start flinging themselves into danger to affect new power ups moving forward.
But yeah, so in response to his courage, it seems the Digivice glows and Metal Greymon's corruption cracks away, energy surges. His arm, I thought this was a really cool way to show the transformation. It's basically his arm that's been like bitten, corrupted, and stuff. It like disappears and turns into energy, and he kind of like attacks with that energy before it forms into the sword cannon.
Yeah, I really didn't know what it was doing. At first, I thought it really was just a straight up the Leomon upgrade from a couple of episodes ago, where he was just gonna get just a second robot arm that looks the same as the other robot arm.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on at all. I was like,
Yeah, that's one
yeah.
reason it was cool. It's like, oh wow, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, it's this arm comes from so the official profile for this new form is MetalGreymon Alterus mode, and Alterus is in lore from MetalGreymon virus X antibody form, and yeah, it is.
I don't think it's really been on anything beyond like trading cards.
I'm not even sure if there's been a trading card.
I looked him up on the wiki, and there is nothing about this guy. He's got like stats and information that must come from a guidebook or something, but he's just not in anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of the X antibody Digimon come from. I don't even like. I think that might be in a VPET, maybe.
Says Digimon Reference Book is his debut, which was only, oh wow, it was barely a year ago too. Huh. So this is a it's not brand new, but it's a very deep cut.
Yeah, it's apparently he was in the Digital Monster X version 2. I don't know anything about VPETs though, so
Yeah, me neither.
um, yeah, it seems like his debut was 2019, so fairly new. Yeah. So yeah, basically once he has a new form and MetalGreymon shoots a cannon and it bounces, it shoots through Slashmon's attack and destroys his core, and that's the end of the fight. And Takaru kind of there. There's an earthquake.
I made a friend.
Yeah, there's a vibration. A giant head comes out of the ground, and Takaru is like, "Hey."
Takaru, who told you you could go talking to people?
So we see that the tower is actually on top of El Doradimon, and El Doradimon lowers his head and opens his head to reveal the entrance to the tower.
So one thing about El Doradimon is I want to I kind of want to give the show more the benefit of the doubt on its structure in this one, in that the fact that we've done two other giant mobile fortress Digimon before this one was that they were trying to prep us to be a bit more receptive to this concept on this scale, just so we'd be ready when we saw it's like really really big one compared to the other only kind of big ones. And like I kind of want to give it the benefit of the doubt on that one instead of going like, man, they keep reusing this giant fortress Digimon gimmick a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a neat concept, and I feel like it's not overplayed at this point. I feel like if they did it like a couple more times, I could see it being like stale or frustrating.
As I said, right now it kind of feels more like they were building up to this as a really big version of the previous ones they'd shown.
Yeah, and I'm still conflicted about how I feel about Eldoradimon in particular being it's just something that I associate with like benevolent and positive things. Like the concept, I
Hmm.
mainly am familiar with it from Avatar and Legend of Korra, where it's
Oh
like,
yeah, that's the turtle. That's exactly the first thing that popped into my head actually when this guy showed up.
yeah, and like even in his appearance in Savers and Crossword or Savers slash Data Squad is like fairly benevolent and positive, and so like I was like, okay. I mean, I think what they're getting at with him being kind of like imprisoned in that firewall and
That's the
like
way I
waking up for
read it, was that
Takaru.
he'd basically been enslaved by Devamon and like forced
Yeah,
to sit here as his fortress. So now he's friends, and that's why he's lowering his head, letting him get in, so they can free him from the clutches of Devamon's keep.
yeah, but it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would this tower need to be on? Like, why not just build a tower in the ground? Like,
Because Devamon's a jerk and he likes enslaving people.
well, the big thing to me is like, so remember when Ogremon had that big dramatic moment about knowing exactly where the tower was?
Yeah.
And then we find out the tower is actually on a mobile fortress and is not necessarily in one position all the time. Like,
It begs oh, and see, and that's how they wound up there and ended up right back at the miasma, despite the fact going past it when they're heading straight there. The fortress moved to meet them regardless.
Yeah. So last scene in the episode in the network, we see that the partner Digimon of the B cast, the B crew.
The B team.
Yeah.
I also refer to them as the B team in the review I wrote earlier. So yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah. Even though they're like some of the fan favorite characters, so they really shouldn't be the B team. But oh well.
That's what they are.
Yeah. So the partner Digimon try attacking, but the baby green Digimon evolve into what Kosharana recognizes as Algamon from the opening arc of the show, and is like, "Oh no, it's gonna be scary." And then the episode just ends with Joe and Mimi running to meet up with them, and Taichi Yamato on Devamon's doorstep, Devamon watching them on his doorstep, and yeah, the fact that it ends on this note where it's like all these things are happening concurrently makes me think that it's, if I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, that it's like these things are coming. There's going to be some way that these actually combine in some way.
I mean, they've got to. I would hope they dovetail somehow, especially like you said. There's the big question of whether what Devamon's doing even has anything to do with Calmeramon and the Algamon and the digital attack, or if that's something separate. We don't know yet. But I think, did they show Devamon sending out Calmeramon, or
I don't think so. So yeah, I think it's supposed to be.
are you supposed to extrapolate here, I guess? And that's the thing, like, kind of I was getting at earlier, which is that the pacing of Taichi and Yamato and Takuru's story definitely ends on, like, a beat here, whereas, like, they're on the doorstep, it's going to the next step. Whereas the B team side of things, where it's just Mimi and Joe running to meet the others, almost feels like, in their case, it ends in, like, the middle of an episode.
Yeah.
It's such a weirdly structured thing with these two here.
Yeah. Well, in the Digimon Encyclopedia, we get MetalGreymon this week, and Koshiro talks about how he's explaining that, like, oh, if you thought his right arm being bare was a mistake, no, actually, it's been kept bare for 20 years of this franchise for this exact
Yeah,
moment.
for 20 years, Koshiro, really? Don't get me wrong, like, especially when I was a kid and they first, Metal Greymon first showed up, I'm like, why does he only get one robot arm? But then you eventually just accept that and go on with it. And now 20 plus years later, you're gonna try and tell me they planned that out. That in 2020 we'll reboot this series and reveal that he had another robot arm under there all along.
What confuses me the most is that, like, why was he for those 20 plus years, like, why was he left-handed? Like, why, like why was that trident arm only on the left hand? That's such a weird detail. And like maybe so he could claw with the other arm. I don't know.
I don't think he ever really did anything with it's because they could only fit one robot arm on the inside of the transforming toy, so it had to be that way.
Oh, you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, it's probably because those sprites were turning. He was facing to the left, so it was the arm that
Uh,
was visible on the
mhm.
left side.
I'd say yeah, that's probably the most obvious. That's the technical boring answer.
Yeah, I pulled back the curtain too far. Now we're bored. Yeah.
Oh, I'm starting to think that I'm starting to think that this Sunday morning kids show might be advertising some sort of marketable goods.
But yeah, I guess now we see that I like this format now that we are going to be that there's going to be have these encyclopedia segments, and if they're following this pattern for the other Digimon, that like we
Hmm.
can be like, okay, we're gonna be covering Metal Greymon this week, and it's like you can then if you then have the segment at the end, then in the segment you can talk about the new thing that's happened this week without
That explains why they pivoted the Digimon Encyclopedia bits to the end. And
right.
hey, there's some level of good planning actually that they lined up getting through all the champion forms and everything just in time to start covering the ultimate forms so they can do this now.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, if they were doing a similar thing for evolution episodes, then it's like, well, it'd be awkward if you like, have the next week clearly wore Greymon, like that kind of removes a lot of the tension. So this is kind of a
Yeah,
cool way to,
this time
to
we
do
get to
that.
speculate. What will where Garurumon put on a shirt? Who knows?
Oh no, no, he needs to take off the pants.
He's just wearing a speedo now.
I mean, you really need to capitalize on the furry energy. So,
Are you kidding? I mean, it's been a banner year for hot werewolves in anime, so
yeah, or I mean, I guess following the BNA example, doesn't the
BNA, B stars.
I'm just thinking the BNA guy has like he wears like a choker, so give Wear Greymon a choker.
Like, Digimon has never shied away from adding more belts into places. Go for it.
Yeah. All right, so let's do the three reviews.
Andy Lucas TT says Digimodify Railgun activate. Digimodify. That's kind of what it's like actually.
Yeah, yeah, it's like Digimodify, but
You get one of them and it's powered by courage.
well, yeah, and without the like potential for lots of different combinations and like being elevated to this huge dramatic moment where like it was kind of cool. Digimodify was like
Hmm.
just like one random part of an episode, and it was like you could get lots of
Yeah,
combinations.
like a lot of strategic technical usage in it, like in the early parts of Tamers where they were really using it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think works a lot better in recollection and through nostalgia lenses than in the actual show. I feel like when I revisited, I was like, oh wait, they're not being very smart with their use of this at all. They're being pretty stupid.
And then they just kind of go back into a regular evolution format and forget about it.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be cool if they actually remembered that later on.
Like I
Oh,
said, there's a good chance that's what happens with this mode change thing.
yeah. Well, CC Takato said more Frontier Digimon.
Okay, like I don't know. I feel like using Calamaramon is only slightly less weird than dropping Velgramon in last episode.
Oh yeah, I saw in your
It's
review.
like,
It
okay, at
was
least she's still
yeah,
an enemy. I kind of get that. Like, she's like, I mean, she was a big enemy Digimon, but that's all she was back then, as opposed to this one, where it's like, if I think how did I describe it? It'd be like if Amaranth from FF9 just showed up as a boss in the FF7 remake. I don't know if you have context for that, but it's just like this weird, this super important kind of multi-layered different loyalties character from another season just shows up as a monster of the week in this episode.
apparently I don't remember Final Fantasy 9 well enough to like. I
Um,
remember his design, but I don't remember his character at all.
oh, it's very much the same. He starts out as this bad guy who's hunting the party, and then he eventually joins the party.
I don't know how I just completely forgot about him.
One Foot Stout says, "I'm rich, biatch," which I guess is the reaction to Mimi's Uber ride earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we already knew kind of from previous things that this version of Mimi was a bit richer than the previous iteration.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that actually like what we saw in this episode was actually fairly tame compared to like we know her grandfather is like the head of this like
Yeah.
huge company, and in previous episode they mentioned that she like, lives in a really fancy or like rich part of Shibuya.
Hmm.
So like in this episode we just see she's having tea and she is in the backseat of a car, a fairly nice
Hmm.
car, but it's not like I don't know, not too different from riding an Uber. Is what it felt
Yeah,
like.
I mean, it's
So
kind of. I mean, it's kind of nice. I guess that was my thing. Is I guess some people were really taken aback by any sight of how rich Mimi is in this version, whereas I totally absorbed it just from one of like her debut episode. Oh, this version of Mimi is really rich. Okay, I like that. And it manifested in the few bits of characterization we'd seen with her before. I still love that little tea party she has like after her debut episode, where she's got just the whole shade set up there.
yeah, yeah.
I'm still not opposed to upcycling Tanamon parts to make a handbag. So. I didn't even notice. Does she still have that, or did she step up to a regular bag now that she's back in the real world and has access to her own supplies?
I don't know. We haven't seen it, but yeah, that'd be the real test of.
But I want to look back and see now what bag does Mimi have now?
At-born individual, irresponsible older brothers. Yeah, that's Joe's brother, Takaru's brother. Like,
Matt Yamato tried to be responsible. He put him in an extremely safe pair of bushes, and they didn't check up on him. I mean, okay, he was a little otherwise occupied, but you can imagine like he looks over, like I hope Takaru's again. Where did he go? Why weren't you keeping an eye on him? Stay. God damn, it's funny because they're both responsible, but in completely opposite ways. Where Yamato's like, "Hey Takaru, please stay here," whereas Joe's brother is like, "Please leave. Here's a bag. Go."
yeah, yeah. Well, they both end up doing the right thing without the older brother actually being.
I make the right choices anyway.
Yeah,
At Grim Catison says, "Finally, character backgrounds. Like you said, crumbs, little bits of them."
yeah, yeah,
Can we get that with if this is the most we're gonna get? Yeah, we already covered that we're worried about how they're gonna do Koshiro. I like it. I think it says a lot that we aren't even we aren't even questioning that with Sora. Like we just know they're gonna do her dirty somehow.
yeah, yeah,
At this
yeah.
point, it's a tradition as old as killing Leomon. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I remember I had a brief moments early on the show, like maybe the show will break the curse of doing Sora dirty, and then episode 4 hit, and I was like, no, I guess not. I guess not.
Some things never change.
Well, I guess actually episode 4 gave me some hope because I was like, oh, she had the moment where she had a knife, and I was like, this 1 second of animation, she has a knife, it's cool. Okay, maybe Sora's gonna be good this time, and then no. Well, at Dak and Jackster said, armed and dangerous.
Ah, okay, that's funny. At CRR McRae says, "Didn't expect that." Which in
Yeah.
this show is always like that's very much like in Digimon Adventure 2020. That's a mark of something effective happening in the show. That something happened that we actually didn't see coming or didn't predict based off the previous version.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also nice that like given how much other like merchandise and stuff there is for the show that it's not like because I expected something like this to have been revealed long in advance. So it's nice that it actually was a genuine surprise watching the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a big thing with like it can let the surprise actually carry it for once rather than being to like, okay, this is Joe's Ultimate Evolution focus episode. We already know it's going to be Zudomon at the end, so the story has to do all of the heavy lifting. Whereas in this one, we actually do get to enjoy that little surprise of a shiny new thing.
Yeah, yeah. Megajimon 22 said Takaru become Kaiser. Because and they clarified that because he touched the miasma and maybe.
I mean, you're gonna go. I mean, he might be evil. I don't know. He hasn't really said anything.
I mean, if you give us a time skip and Takaru's evil later, like sure, yeah, I'll eat
He's
it
gonna
up.
he's gonna be the one who takes over the Eldoradimon and turns it into his new fortress. He was just
Yeah.
befriending him to prepare that. He's playing the long con here. At Lio Sketch says Digimon can upgrade.
At Digimon 22, Demented Liquid. I think they mixed Garurumon and Demented Liquid Gabururumon.
That's the thing, like even not being fully aware that this was a ported over, like already a thing that existed from Cross Wars. Like I think we both had the same reactions. You look at it and go, "Why does that just look like a messed up Garurumon?"
I mean, I feel like the character should have mentioned it. Like Yamato should have been like, are you two related? Like, is that your cousin? Like,
Well, that's a funny thing too, because one of the before like he got down there and found out that it was that El Doradimon was down there. All I could think of when Takaru was climbing into the hole was it made me think of that episode Late in Adventure where Yamato is in the hole and then Sora's down there with the darkness
mm.
manifestation down there, and that's kind of like the vibe I got. And so like there's those weird little lines that start crisscrossing in your head, like okay, this is like from that episode where Yamato was dealing with his inner darkness, and like they're fighting a dark, twisted version of Garurumon. It ends up being just kind of an interesting coincidence and nothing more. But at the time, it's like you start wondering where this episode might actually be going.
Yeah.
At Empire Will says endless Machine Dramon tease. I don't want the show to run so dry on like surprises and ideas that it turns entirely into the only thing to speculate on moving forward is if Agumon's going to become Machine Dramon and how that's going to happen. Is that all we can do here?
Yeah. Oh, at F Greninja, arm railgun.
This might actually be the Digimon that saves us all this year because one of its attacks is Pandemic
Oh
Destroyer.
yeah.
But you gotta wonder if the people writing that in there were aware of that when they did so.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
man,
a.
imagine if he actually called that attack out on screen. Screen caps for days.
I wonder if they had to like change their plans. Like, okay, we can't actually use this name. We can't call it. We can't say that in the show now.
You can't say Pandemic Destroyer.
I mean, one of Beelzemon. Let me look up Beelzemon's attacks. Is it? Yeah, it's oh no, sorry, it's Beelzemon. His other mode, Beelzemon Blast mode. Why do I not see it on the? Oh, because it's a dub thing. Oh yeah. So the original Japanese term is Chaos Flare, but the dub name is Corona Destroyer. So you know,
Oh
Beelzemon is the real savior.
Corona Destroyer,
Yeah.
Pandemic Destroyer. Gosh dang. Let's see. At Vexia PL says Takaru became useful. Did you say became useful? Okay, he was in here before, but like he's only been around like as a member of the cast for a couple of episodes now.
Yeah, but he's been like in the endings on for a while, and we're like, oh yeah, when's he gonna appear? And
Oh, this was such a weird thing too, because I remember when that ending first dropped. And between that and like some of the foreshadowing they'd done by like not showing Takaru when like when Yamato was talking about him being in Tokyo and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I was reading a lot of that as foreshadowing that they were going to reveal that Takaru had actually been in the digital world the whole time and had been going on his own journey, possibly with Patamon and doing things, and they were going to reunite with him, and that was going to be like the next step of it. But then we got the fake Tokyo storyline, where it just turned out he was still in Tokyo and did his thing there. Except then the very next episode, with still no explanation, he's been in the digital world and been imprisoned somehow.
yeah, I mean, there was I don't even want to call it explanation, but like there's like that half a second where he like flickers on screen when he's touching the feather, and it's like that's all you're gonna get. That's the only explanation. We're never gonna
Yeah,
say it any more explicitly than that. And it's like, okay, okay.
it's a case that makes you. It almost made me wonder if like there was a plan that changed somewhere somehow. Like if
Hmm.
they had originally had one idea for how he was going to be there and then switched it, and I don't know.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, at DigiXmonmon said best writing Takaru.
Oh yeah, best dialogue in the episode.
Yeah, he carried it. He was
Incredible. Just incredible writing from the people composing this one. An incredible Seiyu performance. Just really, I'm basically losing my mind at the fact that like he actually does try to tie it more, and Matt specifically says no.
we can do this later once we can do this off
Not
screen.
now. At Congresswoman says, "Does Gomamon fly?"
Oh yes, this is referring to a moment where the four B tier Digimon are flying to address the Algamon, and we see that Palmon is latched onto Biyomon and Tentomon so that she can be dragged along, but Gomon is just floating in the air.
Okay, that's to be fair. That's Goemon's a swimmer, and
Yeah, yeah.
swimming things, and especially Digimon can fly. That's the case in the Digimon World 1 when you get a swimming Digimon, they just follow you swimming through the air.
I mean, they have established in the show that like this space when we saw that Tentomon to Kabuterimon episode, like
Yeah,
there were those shark Digimon that were flying around. So it's like this is both air and water at the same time. Makes sense.
yeah. I mean, like if they really wanted to, it would have been a cinch for them just to have him like on top of some marching fishes floating along
Yeah.
there, I guess. But instead, yeah, it was just cruising along.
Yeah, actually, I never thought about how I never questioned whether marching fishes could fly because they can obviously fly. So
I mean, I just naturally assume they can.
yeah, I
They're
mean,
magical rainbow fish. They can do. They haven't gotten as crazy with it, I think, in the original season, where there were periods where marching fishes could just do whatever Gomamon wanted them to.
yeah, that's what the show's
They
missed the last couple episodes is not enough marching fishes.
Not enough marching fishes. At Raffi the Sky X says, "Ty being Marcus."
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
he got in there and grabbed the teeth. He didn't just start punching it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why Tai is the only one. We're talking about the difference in the character designs in this new version, but Tai Chi's most of the character designs in the original show had these big elaborate gloves, and Tai Chi's the only one that kept them for this version, and this is why, because
He checked beforehand that great little line in the in the first episode. Should I have my gloves?
oh yeah,
We thought the show was going to be more funny and clever in its winks and nods to the original.
yeah.
Oh, we were so young.
Faku AF said justice for Frontier. Yeah, I mean they just keep showing up. We got this episode. We got Frontier Digimon, Crosswords Digimon.
Yeah, this one was more so than usual. Was just a party of cameos, including new forms for Armor Digimon.
Have we got anyone from Tamers?
Like off the top of my head, I don't think we did. It's especially like big, heavy hitters from Frontier, like Calmeramon and Veldermon show up in the kind of major capacities. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of. So I say justice for Frontier. I'm sure there's a lot of Ranamon and Calmeramon fans that are really happy to see her again.
I mean, I don't. You call them heavy hitters. I don't know if they're heavy hitters. I don't know if there's like who would even
Well, I
be
mean, they
like.
were one of like the main 10 spirit users in
Yeah, right. They're
the
not just incidental bad guys. They're like,
yeah.
yeah. I think it would be more jarring if it was their since they're like humanoid spirits were more common. Like
Yeah.
if Duskmon showed up or if Ranamon was that her name? Yeah.
Yeah, Ranamon was Calmero. Yeah, that would have been probably weirder, actually. The fact that they're using the Beast Spirits does simplify things a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
as weird as Velgamon was, Duskmon would have been even weirder. Although, I don't know, I think they could do something. Duskmon might be fun to see because I don't know, and maybe it's just me, I've always read his design as kind of looking like an evil Omnimon.
Oh yeah.
So they could have him. That'd be a fun fight to see, I think. Well, in theory, not. Don't want to get ahead of what Adventure 2020 is capable of showing us here, but
Yeah. So let's move on to some listener questions
yeah.
slash comments. So first off, at Austin LC23 said, honestly, while a neat way to spice things up, the cynic in me says that these new forms will only be for Ty and Matt, and really it makes me wish the series was just about X antibody Digimon instead, especially since they're so underutilized. I think it's a good point because like X antibody Digimon almost never show up in the anime series, aside from obviously X Evolution the movie, and that's a
Yeah.
whole other
Well,
beast.
I mean, as we were discussing here too. I mean, that's the thing. It's like they're so barely used that the Digimon that MetalGreymon's new upgrade comes from on this hasn't even been in anything before. Like his arm is getting a marquee appearance before he himself gets to do anything.
Yeah, and I could see how like maybe I don't know. I mean, the X antibody Digimon are like so. I think it could be complex and troublesome for the lore to like start actually introducing like them and calling them X antibody Digimon. So I think this is a neat way to like sneak in parts of those designs into the main Digimon without it being like actually unleashing the X antibody into the lore of the series.
Yeah, like referencing them. That's the obvious choice. Is there a Weregarurumon X? Like,
There's a weird room on
uh,
everyone, I think. Oh God, oh no, I typed into Google where Gurumon space X, and then
oh no.
the autocomplete result was the first one was where Gurumon X Matt, and I'm like,
Yeah, I believe that.
why would you ship? Hmm.
They're like family.
Yeah. Ugh.
You can pet the dog in Digimon Adventure. I'm sorry, that's terrible.
I don't think about that too long.
Like I said, my big worry is just, are they going to forget about it as soon as the Mega Evolutions roll around? Possibly, or there going to be mode changes for the Mega Evolutions. So you can go back and forth on it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I think there's enough evidence in the next episode preview to assume that it's happening for Matt as well next week. But
Yeah.
yeah, if it's going to happen for the rest of the crew, I mean, apparently, so like where Gurumon has an X form, I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
of the other kids Digimons do, but I did at least see that they don't all have them. So like they'd have to start getting creative if
Okay.
they were to do that. But that would be cool to see some creativity in these designs and stuff, and introduce new things into the franchise. So I would totally welcome that. But yeah. I mean, the fact that they're not even grouped
It's
together right now makes me think that like it's probably unlikely.
What's the thing? Like, that's the funny part is like Koshiro's over here at the end of the episode doing the Digimon Encyclopedia on the new form for MetalGreymon, even though in show he has no clue that this just happened.
It's true, huh?
Like he has no idea. Like they aren't even conceiving that. So if it does happen for the other kids, maybe in like an upcoming episode or two, like as they're fighting these other cyber attacks and everything, they're gonna be like just as shocked, if not more, that it happens.
Yeah. All right, so at Empire Well said, no question, but as a gym climber, seeing Takaru climbing with zero fear made total sense. Kids are crazy and have no sense of danger with climbing.
Yes,
Yeah.
like that's actually a good part of this this particular version of Takaru. It's just he's got to go down that hole.
The fact that he has like no fear seeing this giant eyeball is like, for a second I was like, this is not fit. This doesn't make any sense. But he's so young, he doesn't have any fear. So
No sense of personal preservation on this boy.
yeah, exactly. I guess that's why his parents were totally fine leaving him alone in the apartment in the middle of a not a pandemic, but a disaster.
Oh no, he had to be self-sufficient because his mom just abandoned him.
Oh.
Oh
uh,
no, new version of Yamato and Takaru's mom is really irresponsible. Is that going to factor into him and Yamato's relationship? I don't know.
Oh, we'll see if they're even allowed to talk about the relationship, or if every time he talks, Yamato's like, no, later,
Not
later.
now. Later.
All right, so some questions about Splashmon. First off, from Lucas Kukas. Is there a lore significance or anything to the glowing shape inside Splashmon? I see it in all of its art, and the show focused on it a few times, but didn't really go into it. When I first saw it, I thought it was the armor Digi-Egg of reliability. Oh, and also Leo Sketch said, I didn't watch much of Cross Wars. Does Splashmon Darkness Mode always have that glowing gem inside it? It looks a lot like a Digimental friendship. So I think it's funny that they one of them point out Digimental reliability and then one point out friendship. So it's all in the eye of the beholder.
And yeah, we talked about that earlier. Like you said, this was a thing that was definitely there in the original version for him in Cross Wars, but like with so much focus on there, it was definitely like you said. You think it was supposed to be just kind of focusing, so we would know that to get across the idea that he's got a liquid body that they have to attack the core of in order to do any damage to him. Of
Yeah. So like it's definitely like a weird design detail. I still think the weirder part is the baseball, but like why does like okay, you have a little sphere that shoots the water or miasma or whatever, but like why does it have those lines on it that look like a baseball? Like just don't make it a baseball. Like
and like it gets almost as weird, like honed in focus as the glowing orb in him.
hmm.
Like it's just some weird focus on the design choices of this character, who is already really weird, as we've covered.
Yeah, it's just a weird design. So next question from CRR McRae. One of the attacks of the Alteros, the weapon that MetalGreymon has. Oh yeah, this is the kind of thing like that. It's called Pandemic Destroyer. MetalGreymon shall free us from this madness. Yeah, and then it also asks, is this turning corruption into weapons thing the thing that eventually causes the Mugenjamon slash Machinejamon evolution?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that like he's
I could see that, but I don't know. I feel like that would that could be the twist they do on Dark Evolution this time, is that instead of it being from Taichi being, going all
mhm.
out or pushing him too hard or something, it could just be from corruption. That could be the twist they're going for.
Okay, you know what? Okay, so a couple of things. I mean, that is kind of interesting, the idea that the upgrade came from corruption and they upgraded too much, and that results in the dark evolution thing. But also the idea of them being infected with a corruption that they can't get rid of through one way or the other really calls to mind that plot line from Try.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And which was a whole other kettle of fish that they went into with that. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine them going back to that well as a plot line so soon. Though then again, this show thrives on throwing off my expectations. So
I mean, honestly, like if there were the idea of like as the Digimon fight more and more, like the idea that like maybe Taichi gets multiple upgrades and like multiple parts
mhm.
of Metal Greymon get improved each time, and then eventually becomes Machinejamon is so cool. I don't think they actually do it.
There's
And
no way they're gonna do it. And that's an interesting point actually. Is remember this upgrade specifically comes from Metal Greymon X virus form. So a virus, a corruption. So yeah, there actually I think that is a valid thread of speculation, if anything.
But also, it's like, I mean, obviously, this new weapon or it doesn't. Machine Digimon predates his weapon, so it's like if we're drawing a visual through line, at least in terms of design, it's like this is
Hmm.
something that is not really reflected in Machine Digimon. So to me, I'm kind of like thinking they're separate things. They're like,
Going separate. Yeah, it represents something
yeah,
separate.
yeah, going separate ways. Yeah,
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's only one episode in, and only the last minutes of this one episode, so it's all speculation at this point.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody but Toei knows where this is actually going.
Yeah. I guess on a similar note, Megajimon22 asked, could you see the miasma corrupting humans the same way it corrupts Digimon, either to trigger a Dark Age evolution, or maybe if Adventure 2022 happens, becomes a proxy for the Dark Ocean / Dark Spores? Ty got a MetalGreymon Virus X weapon from it, just saying. So, yeah.
First and foremost, I'm pretty sure. I mean, like we all kind of like mentally drew kind of a connection between the Dark Ocean and the miasma when it showed up, right? Like that almost seems like a obvious connection to make, if anything.
I guess so. To me, like the Dark Ocean isn't the thing that's like terrifying at the Dark Ocean is like the unendingness to it. So like,
As opposed to this one where it just kind of pops up wherever it's convenient.
well, yeah, that too.
It is unending. It just keeps showing up. I'm gonna laugh if it does just keep turning up in odd spots. This time there's just a puddle they have to go around, but they have to split into two groups and take 3 episodes to do it. Or like Dark Spores. I'm trying to remember watching the episode. Did Taichi and Yamato get any of the miasma on them and do anything, or was it just the Digimon?
Well, I mean, it got on Taichi's gloves when he's lifting Splashmon's teeth
Yeah.
out. So like, and I think Tucker also when he was in the climbing down.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's possible. I mean, the series could go in lots of different directions, and
Mm-hmm.
I try to get
Well,
my
it's
hopes up too much about it because both of those, like,
uh,
if either Tucker or Taichi got it, and then it affected their behavior at all, is diverging from what I expect from the show. So like, that would be cool, but
well,
too cool to get my hopes on.
yeah, no. I don't say with this show specifically is I've been burned by getting my hopes up so many times that I've got to like every time a theory like this pops up, I've got to temper my expectations for what they're actually going to do with it. But like I said, that leads me back to the whole darkness thing from the original Digimon Adventure was
Oh
Yamato and
yeah, yeah.
Sora being infected with that, and that leading to a lot of elements of their behavior. And if they do that here, I mean, it would be a repeat of a plot beat from the original series, which evolutions aside, they really haven't done. But it would also, I don't know, it'd be something.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison, that plot beat in the original show, because it's like I remember that darkness or whatever, like it doesn't really have, I think they kind of like in the like literal lore of the show, they never really explain where that darkness comes from, but it never felt narratively frustrating or unsatisfying watching it because it came from a place of like the character development made sense
Let's say
why.
we watched Matt struggle with that element of his character for
Right.
like the entire series. So to
Right.
have it, I mean, it was already like a tangible, palpable thing. So it turned into an actual physical thing here in like the end game, basically. Yeah, I mean, it was weird, but I never said, oh, it doesn't make sense. They shouldn't do that or anything. It fit with what they'd done through the entire show to that point.
Right. So like it's an interesting contrast to this where it's like if they use this dark miasma to trigger something like that, like that sounds like it's the exact opposite. Like instead of it being rooted entirely in character development and
Hmm.
not in, like lore establishment, it's the opposite. It's like, oh, there's no character development. It's just they touched the thing and now they do like so like I don't know that kind of so I think with that in mind, I don't think I would want to see this
I don't think I would
miasma.
want it. I'm just saying it's there.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I'd want to see it infect them if it like. I mean, it would be great if they use that to develop the characters. But if it's just there to like have a cool moment and then there's no character depth to it, then it's like, okay.
That kind of that last one you described is kind of part and parcel to how Adventure 2020 has worked so far.
It's true. That is just kind of the whole show. Yeah. Well. Next question from Dak and Jackster. This was a better evolution episode than MetalGreymon's actual evolution episode.
I completely agree.
It reminded me a lot of Globemon's debut. So that's Globemon from Atmon, and I've seen 99% of Atmon, but I do
Mm.
not remember the Globemon's debut episode, so I can't make comparisons. um, but they continue. If you could, would you reshuffle these plot beats back to episode 10, or is it better they save this dire situation for some more lateral surprises?
Um, so like my thought is that like basically just I mean it's still not I would say quite on the same level of the original Metal Greymon debut from back in original Recipe Adventure, but just Taichi's actions and the situation and the framing of it did make it feel a bit more. It made it feel more earned to me, which was my problem. And I know a lot of other people, specifically not yours, actually, with the Metal Greymon debut back in episode 10. was that it felt unearned. I didn't really buy like the direness of the conflict that led into it, whereas this one had that. Would I reshuffle the plot beats if it were me? No, I would have just asked that episode 10 do its debut as well as this one did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think like when I look at the series as a whole, I think it's totally fine for that early one in episode 10 to not really need tons of weight behind it. If
Mhm.
this one has a little bit of weight and then we get even further ones down the road that have even more stage, like presumably there's gonna be more stages.
Like I
So
said, this provides a template for how the stages and upgrades are going to go moving forward. Yeah, there's a potential that they'll get this right.
yeah, so like, but I mean, I think like everyone's reaction at the time to those early evolution episodes in episode 10,
Mhm.
like it makes sense that it's like we come to expect something from an ultimate evolution, and I think like if they're like in planning the series, they should have expected that people will be frustrated by that, you know. So
Yeah,
like,
people are going to have attachments to how these worked in the original. I mean, when you have a whole thing where like this form change, this upgrade that these characters get is very well known for being powered by character development to the point where we have them carrying around literal symbols of that character development that informs that. And you're right, they should have been aware that that's not something they can just gloss over.
yeah, and I think like the argument I think you could make is that okay, but that's how you react as returning fans, and the show is like serving dual purpose for both returning fans and new fans and new kids and
Hmm.
stuff. So like if the new kids don't care about that, then like that shouldn't affect, you know, like they're aiming for those new kids, so they don't really need to have that baggage and stuff in mind. But I was surprised, like I showed this the reboot to one of my friends who had no experience with Digimon, and she watched up to episode 16 or so, I think, and she was kind of like, these ultimate evolutions, like what's the point? Like they hype them up as
Okay, so
like,
that's
oh my god,
oh,
ultimate. It's like you're all getting ultimate, so like why? It's not a big deal. Like
that's a good comparison point because I mean, obviously, like me and you and everybody else who's in the established fandom was complaining about the Ultimate Evolution episodes for that reason. But that's a good point that like we're all coming at it from being informed by the previous version. So the idea that new viewers basically had the same reaction to the problems with that arc is kind of vindicating, actually.
yeah, but I don't know. Like maybe kids, on the other hand, kids are just like, looks shiny, looks cool. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. I'm way too old. I can't speak to what the kids' reaction to these is. But I do know. I don't know. Like again, I watch a lot of Tokusatsu series, Kamen Rider Super Sentai,
Hmm.
and I mean, there's a lot of perfunctory upgrades and stuff in those shows as well. But a lot of times, I mean, they do upgrades differently. Whereas I guess you come to expect that it's just going to be a new piece of equipment that they get, and there's kind of a story leading up to it and everything. And maybe that does go lead into what you're talking about here, where the kids have different expectations. Whereas we expect that these things are specifically powered by character development, but yeah, then maybe the kids are just coming into it with the same, school of thought as like a Power Rangers upgrade, where it's just okay, they got a new power, and that's all they need for the plot beat of the show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, next question from Andy Lucas TT is congrats, Adventure 2020. I was actually surprised by the reveal. Well done. Very cool. And they ask, would it be cool to see V Greymon? And I'll get to this, what I think they mean by this. Would it be cool to see V Greymon and Z Garurumon as individual megas for Tai and Matt as further changes, or maybe a new form? Or would that be too much of a change from just modifying? So I think by V Greymon they meant Victory Greymon, and by Z Garurumon they meant Z Garurumon.
Okay, let's open up. Yeah, these are like video game and manga forums. These are interesting looking.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, a lot of Digimon are just in the manga or just in the anime. Just in the video game.
I mean, like, look, again, they brought in friggin' MetalGreymon Virus X, so everything's on the table at this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, these particular forms are not ones that I jump to. I think Victory Greymon has been hinted at in being in the like booster set 4 of the new card game. So like
Oh, okay.
maybe he'll be relevant in my mind soon. But like these two in particular weren't ones that I immediately jumped to or anything.
They're really only just kind of like, I mean, they are just kind of like form tweaks of War Greymon and Metal Garurumon. Looking at them, I mean, and I can see like this whole mode change thing that they're doing right now, maybe leading into something like that. But I feel like they're probably, since they didn't even go directly for the established Metal Greymon Virus X here and instead adapted it into just a new form here, I feel like they're probably still we're gonna be getting, at least as far as these changes are concerned, specifically new things rather than adapting established forms in somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I think in particular these two forms, like Victory Greymon looks cool, but Z Garurumon,
Hmm.
I'm like, so it's just Metal Garurumon, but with like a bigger cannon on his back. Like, oh, I don't care.
Adventure Greymon looks kind of cool, but as someone who has a soft spot for Frontier, my go-to for Greymon with the sword is always going to be Emperor Greymon.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
even if Emperor Greymon and Magnum Garurumon are also symptoms of the worst part of Frontier, so
Oh, I mean, I mean, this show is so different from Frontier, where they took the two main characters and focused everything on them, and put the other characters aside in a different setting. Like that would never
oh
happen in this
god, no,
show.
and I mentioned this in my reviews, is this show's been giving me terrifying flashbacks to the latter part of Frontier for the last few episodes. It's like, of
Ugh.
all the things to take influence for Frontier from, please don't do this part.
Yeah. Well, last question from Digimon 22, and they ask that Railgun is Metal Greymon X Virus's weapon, so they seem to be really leaning into the idea of Mugenjimon/Machinedramon being a dark evolution for Taichi. What weapon on any Metal Greymon variant is the coolest? I think Rise Greymon's revolver is still the best. So there are apparently a lot of Metal Greymon forums.
Well, it is what happens when you're the popular boy.
Yeah. Thankfully, there is a page on the Digimon Wiki, not Wikimon, but the Digimon Wiki, that has a bunch of different Greymon forms. I think I never really thought about Rise Greymon's canon before, but like I didn't realize until looking at it more that it's like it's just a giant gun. It's just like
It's
a
just
like a
a,
normal pistol, but just
yeah, it's
giant.
just a whole pistol that comes off. Yeah,
But I think my favorite is Rise Greymon X, which is basically this Rise Greymon's gun, but with two swords around it too. Like,
make it like a wave motion railgun type
yeah.
thing. Hey, as long as we're giving railguns to Greymons, I guess that kind of how many swords is Greymon gonna have by the end of this? Let's see. I think I actually I mean, gosh, I actually do not know all the various Greymon and Metal Greymon variants. I guess like as I kind of alluded to previously, I do have an attachment to the just the original virus version of Metal Greymon, just because I remember being kind of fascinated as the show was coming out, but then seeing all the other ancillary media and going, Greymon, Metal Greymon is blue and a virus type and all this stuff. I wonder what that's about. If that was just something from the like the prototype VPET days, or just what the situation there was. Like for an actual like attack or weapon he has, he's just got like the same the same metal claw and the missiles that original Metal Greymon has. So I don't know if I have like a specific one I like. I've always liked the extending metal claw on Metal Greymon in general, and that's one thing I've liked about him in 2020 here so far, is that they're using that a lot in this version, and I think that's really cool.
I was just looking at the I was deceived because I was like, wait, Metal Greymon. We've been talking a lot about Metal Greymon Virus X, but then I like looking from afar, Metal Greymon not virus, like Vaccine X, whatever, also looks really blue. But I realized that was just it's because like the artwork has his like metal very prominent.
Oh yeah, no, he's still orange. His
Yeah,
metal is
yeah,
just like I guess technically it's supposed to be more silvery. Oh, his claw is cool actually, like the individual fingers on there.
yeah. Basically, just upgraded the fingers to move on their own, I guess.
Trident Arm version 9.9. Oh, X Evolution names, will you ever make sense?
Oh, that is an interesting name. uh,
Like that's so extra. Like I would have put that on something on a Digimon I came up with when I was 11. So I guess what you get when you're attacking X's onto the names of everything for form changes.
I mean, it's kind of also the like Evangelion movie numbering, you know, like.
Actually, Metal Metal Greymon 1.0 plus 3.0.
Oh, yeah. All right. So now on to our final thoughts of the episode. So you've already written a review and given it a rating. So what's your rating? Has their discussion changed your opinion of it at all?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of we addressed a lot of like little kind of like littler structural issues that I wasn't really thinking of when I was writing the review, where I was dealing with more like the broader things I appreciated, just in terms of like showing the characters and giving us the characterization we did, and not trying to overcomplicate the structure of what I was doing, rather than just showing us what each character was doing and making that entertaining in the moment. Even as like now we got to question the whole idea. Like I said, you brought up a lot of things with like how Takaru waking up Eldoradimon actually didn't make a ton of sense or didn't tell us anything about Takaru. But in the moment, I was very enjoying it and thought it was really cool. And so overall, I ended up giving the episode a 3 out of 5 stars. And I don't think I would change that right now, but I think with the discussions and some of the hangups that came up here and really getting in depth with it over the course of this, it would probably be a lower 3 out of 5 stars than a higher 3 out of 5 stars.
All right. I mean, I think I'm also going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. for just like I feel like my like both my positive and negative reactions have just been dulled more recently. I'm just like, like
Oh no, I would definitely feel you. One thing you find with reviewing shows a lot over time, and especially a particular show episode by episode, is that as it goes on, you're definitely grading it on a curve with itself.
yeah.
And that's kind of what this one was. Whereas this one, like, I don't know, if I'd seen this like way back when the show started, I would probably grade it lower. But for now, it's like for Digimon Adventure 2020, I found myself having a plenty good time with it, and there was enough stuff I liked. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think this episode feels very when I'm done with it, I'm like, it feels very average. Like there was stuff to be excited about, but also like that excitement has worry and concern for the future as well.
I was saying,
And
like that. I was like, a show that hadn't kind of betrayed my expectations, to use a harsh term for it. That ending would have been that ending reveal would have been like an uncompromisingly, like, really cool. Let's see where we go here thing. Whereas now it's just way too easy to start discussing all the ways that the worrying implications that could go and what directions that could go. As we kept, like, I mean, that's of all the other things we critiqued about this episode, I feel like we kept coming back to that as like, okay, but how could this, what ways that we would not like could they go with this?
yeah, it's interesting plotting my own like when and how my impressions like because early it was having that same kind of discussion, that same kind of language, but in the
Hmm.
opposite, like how will this be exciting? How will this be cool? What are they going to do with this? And now it's like,
Yeah.
how are they going to fail us in the future? Like,
How are they gonna screw this one up? You
oh
had a really cool idea here. How are you gonna? I don't like doing that. I don't want to be that guy that's having bad faith in this show and everything. But like, it's once bitten, twice shy, and all that.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't want to be too negative on the show. Like, I think
Hmm.
because especially like dedicate an entire podcast to it. But I have
Yeah.
heard people be like, oh, the main thing they get out of the show is like having venting frustration with things that when they watch it and find it lacking. So I hope it's entertaining.
Yeah, that's kind of why I rated this episode the way I did, because like it was entertaining. I think I overall had a good time with it.
And for MVP this episode, I think I'm going to give it to this is kind of a dark horse pick, but sorry, a dark male Jamon pick. Ooh, I'm going to pick Skull Knightmon because I just like that design. I'm excited to see more of him, and he barely did anything this episode, but
Yeah, he's a really unique, weird design, which I think makes sense coming off of like from something that was so far outside the original series' designs, like Cross Wars. That's one of the things that gets you to look forward to with this series is like, okay, if nothing else, what weird cameos are they going to keep throwing in here just that you aren't expecting? Uh, and with regards to that, I guess I would say that my MVP would be uh, Kalmaramon, just because, yeah, it's fun to see. I think she makes more sense as at least as far as you're porting random frontier characters in here, and just yeah, showed moving forward that yeah, there's Velgramon wasn't a one-off. We're gonna see more of these guys, which I think is cool. Probably the most Frontier can hope for.
there's actually a moment where Kamarman, when Kamarman was initially flying sideways, and they said the name, and I was like, oh, are they not going to reveal her like inner like body form that like when she
Yeah,
flips? But then it's like, oh no, okay, they are revealing that. I was like, because like without the character involved from the original from Frontier, I was like, maybe they're not going to show that like
yeah, they're just gonna
humanoid
use it
part.
as a big beastie type thing, but no, she's there. She's still just going roar,
Yeah,
grarg, but she's there.
yeah, yeah. All right, so next episode is episode 22, titled "The Unbeatable Blue Sagittarius," and we see in the teaser that it seems like they're going to be fighting Skull Knightmon inside the tower, and that narration says that like that's when Weregurumon's roar echoes into the sky. So looks like sounds pretty much like Weregurumon's going to be getting a similar kind of upgrade.
I mean, we gotta. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of assume it's going to be happening, just because, like, we don't know if the others are going to do it, but in the way that this franchise works, if Taichi gets it, you got to assume Yamato's probably going to as well.
Yeah, like as soon as it happened, I was like, my brain was racing through the possibilities of like, is it just gonna be a Taichi thing? Is it gonna be a Taichi Yamato thing, or is it an everyone thing?
I mean, my hopes are that everyone gets it, but obviously, so we're jumping to Yamato next. Like I said, I mean, with what little we've been given and just the general state of Adventure 2020 at this point, my hope is that it's as effective as this episode. I hope that seeing the B team get to do more on their side, we get to see them do more rather than just coming up on the enemy and starting the fight, and like you said, maybe get some implications of how these two plot lines are going to intersect later on. And I mean, even though we know that this kind of upgrade is probably coming, I hope that what it turns out to be for WereGarurumon manages to be just as surprising and engaging as the one for MetalGreymon was here.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I kind of have some more faith in these episode teasers kind of like playing with our expectations, because the one for the teaser for last week prominently showed Tucker receiving the Digi-Egg, and looking back on it, I was like, wait, that didn't actually happen, because like in mid receive, Skull and Diamond took the egg. So it's like, I think that shows at least some savvy in terms of like playing with our
Yeah, they're
expectations.
finally after being so rote about being able to predict what was going to happen, the upgrades that were going to occur for the Ultimate Evolution arcs. Yeah, they do seem to be kind of playing with us in terms of like what this next stage is going to be.
So yeah, I hope there's like something interesting that happened, like shakes out. Yeah, because like we also didn't see anything about the like network stuff that happened this episode in the teaser for it. So
Oh yeah, that was completely I knew they were going to be doing something, but I thought it was mostly going to be kind of a little drawn out bit of them trying to get back into the digital world. But no, they've got their own little mission now.
yeah, so I guess actually now thinking about I think there are three possibilities for these upgrades. Either it's just a Tai and Matt thing, it's an everyone thing, or it's a Taichin Yamato gets special individual episodes for it, and the others get it all in one go. Like all four of them get it at once. Is something that
I
could
can
happen.
see that.
um,
Just very quickly go past them.
yeah, which I mean it would be better than nothing, because then at least they would see their new forms, and those new forms would get to be exhibited over time in battles and stuff. So I'd still welcome that.
I too would welcome that. I mean, yeah, like yeah, they've shown they can surprise us again. So if they can if they can keep doing that pleasant surprising, I think that we'll stay in good territory.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that brings us to the end of the show.
Yeah,
Last week's Digiprompt was in honor of WereGarurumon's debut as a missile surfer. What Digimon would you want to see pick up in extreme sport?
such a cool part of that episode. I just remembered.
It was definitely the best part. And my favorite response came in from at Dak and Jackster, and they said Makamon doing anything that doesn't normally involve motorcycles. So for people who don't know, I did not recognize the Digimon. Makamon is apparently a new, I think as of 2020, like new for the VPETs. Makamon is
Oh.
basically a motorcycle. um, and like I think the lore says he is like doesn't the motorcycle does not have a seat and will reject anyone that tries to sit on it. Anyway,
like
um, but yeah, Dak and Jackster clarifies that like, tell me where in the rule book it says a motorcycle cannot play basketball. So I want my Airbud sequel with Makamon.
just like something really like something like that requires arms like tennis or something.
Yeah.
Or moving sideways, which motorcycles notoriously have trouble doing.
So this week's Digiprompt is, what Digimon do you want to see appear as a random episodic villain in Adventure 2020, and who would defeat them? So send your Digiprompt responses and general feedback to potages@gmail.com, potages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on our website, potages.com. If this is your first episode, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or in traditional podcast apps. And if you want to support the podcast, share with your friends who don't go running off and climb into a toxic ditch when you leave them, tell them to stay safe. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps out. I am Definitely Jeff on Twitter, and you can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It or Weeb It. We recently released an episode talking about Mr. Love, Queen's Choice.
Oh, I've been hearing good things about that.
Yeah, if you look at like what we ended up not recommending the show, but I think it's
Oh,
still
wow.
well, our bar is very high. It's like, would we say that everyone should go watch it right now and
Oh,
say
okay.
it's like the next best thing? And it's like, no, it's not that, but I think it's still really good, and they're really cute,
Huh.
really attractive boys. But and we had a super fan on as a guest who was really into it, and it was a really fun episode.
All right.
So yeah, so Chris, if people want to find more of your stuff online, where can they check you out?
Pretty much all of my reviews and stuff I write goes on Anime News Network, animenewsnetwork.com. I'm doing episode reviews for Digimon Adventure 2020, obviously, and then also this season I'm reviewing the Gymnastics Samurai and Assault Lily Bouquet, so you can follow those as they go along. And I also contribute for Best of Seasons and other things that come up there. I also have a Twitter account that I update every now and then, but mostly just use to follow other fun people. That's at bdubsprowl on Twitter. Other than that, I don't haven't upgraded my Tumblr that often, and otherwise that's it, I guess.
All right, so yeah, check Chris out on all those places. We'll have links in the show notes where you can easily check that all out. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be back with another guest next week to talk about episode 22, The Unbeatable Blue Sagittarius. Bye, and remember, never stop Digimon. Thank you so much. So it was really
Hey, no
fun.
problem. Thank you so much. This was really fun. This was good. It was, yeah, good to have this amount of talking about. I kind of wish I'd done this before writing the review, but that'll help me get my thoughts out. Way that it's a symbiotic relationship.
I worry that like the structure of the show, I don't know, like forces me to the structure of the podcast. I mean, like forces me to be too nitpicky and like too in the weeds, and then like so I don't know. I really appreciate the perspective of someone who doesn't like walk through with a fine tooth comb and is like, well, here's it was terrible because of like I don't know. I really don't like the CinemaSins
it
philosophy. So
no, it's one of those fun things to like talk about, I think. But when I'm trying to like make a full assessment of the episode as a general thing, like I think that's fun to comment on sometimes. There was one week where I was reviewing it where I couldn't avoid talking about how ridiculous the way they had got split up and gone around the miasma was, the way they'd referred to it after that fact. I just
oh
had to get that out of my system one week because it was so ridiculous. But it was more just like, I don't know if I can count this as like affecting the entertainment value of the episode, but they are nitpicks that are there and they're just really apparent at this point.